Hello, Army. Lights down, volume up, because tonight we're stepping into a question that sounds simple but quietly shakes the entire K-pop friendship universe. Who is really Taehyung's best friend? Not who stands next to him on stage, not who trends the most on social media, but who actually stays when the cameras cut, when the applause fades, when the world stops screaming his name. You think you know the answer. Most people think they do. But here's the twist that makes this list impossible to ignore. What if the name you expect isn't where you think it is? What if best friend doesn't mean shared dorms, matching tattoos, or years under the same spotlight? What if it means emotional timing, silent understanding, parallel wounds, and moments that never went viral? Taehyung, known for his deep gaze, old soul personality, unpredictable warmth, and artistic solitude, has always been different. He doesn't collect people, he connects with them. And those connections don't always make sense from the outside. Actors, idols, unexpected friendships, quiet bonds built on mutual respect rather than constant presence. This is not a list about popularity, it's about emotional gravity. Why does Taehyung gravitate toward people outside his immediate circle? Why do some friendships feel louder, while others feel heavier? Why does one name shock fans when placed lower than expected, while another suddenly makes everything click? This isn't gossip, and it's not fantasy. It's built from real interactions, interviews, shared histories, subtle moments, and the kind of chemistry you can't fake even if you tried. As we count down, ask yourself this. If fame disappeared tomorrow, who would still understand Taehyung without explanations? Who would sit with him in silence and not feel awkward? Who would recognize his moods before he speaks? And most importantly, are we, as fans, sometimes confusing proximity with intimacy? Tonight's list isn't here to destroy expectations, but it will definitely challenge them. Some names will feel obvious, others will feel uncomfortable, and at least one will make you pause and rethink everything you thought you knew about Taehyung's inner circle. Stay with me, because starting from number 7, each spot reveals not just a friendship, but a different side of Taehyung himself. And by the time we reach the top, the real question won't be, who is his best friend? But do we really understand how Taehyung chooses the people he lets close? Number 7, Suho. Quiet respect over loud chemistry. When people hear Suho's name connected to Taehyung, many immediately ask, are they even close? And that reaction is exactly why this friendship sits at number 7. Not because it's weak, but because it's subtle, restrained, and built on a kind of respect that doesn't scream for attention. Suho isn't the type who floods social media with moments, and Taehyung isn't someone who measures closeness by how often names are mentioned together. Their bond exists in a quieter frequency, one that resonates more with maturity than with chaos. As leaders in their own ways, Suho as EXO's steady backbone and Taehyung as BTS's emotional wildcard, they share a mutual understanding of pressure that doesn't need to be explained out loud. Both debuted young, both carried enormous expectations, and both learned early that smiling on stage doesn't mean the weight disappears backstage. Their interactions, though rare, often feel grounded, respectful, and almost ceremonial, like two people acknowledging each other's journey rather than clinging to constant companionship. There's a noticeable lack of performative closeness here. No exaggerated fan service, no forced narratives, and that's precisely what makes this friendship real, yet distant. Taehyung tends to gravitate toward people who let him be unpredictable, messy, and emotionally expressive, while Suho embodies discipline, structure, and calm control. That difference creates admiration, not dependency. You can sense it in the way Taehyung speaks about senior idols with reverence rather than intimacy. Suho fits that category perfectly. They don't hang out loudly, they don't become headlines, but when paths cross, there's an unspoken acknowledgement of shared survival in an industry that rarely shows mercy. This is not a friendship built on late-night calls or inside jokes. It's built on silent nods, mutual respect, and the understanding that sometimes being there doesn't mean being close all the time. And that's why Suho lands at number 7. Important, meaningful, but not emotionally central to Taehyung's daily, inner world. Number 6, Kim Min-jae. Shared struggle and quiet brotherhood. Kim Min-jae's place in Taehyung's life feels like one of those connections you don't notice at first, but once you see it, everything suddenly makes sense. This isn't a flashy celebrity friendship that lives off public appearances or viral moments. It's the kind that grows in the background, rooted in similar journeys, similar fears, and a shared understanding of what it means to chase a dream in silence before the world finally notices. Kim Min-jae started as an idol trainee before finding his true path in acting, and that alone creates a deep, unspoken bridge between him and Taehyung. Both know what it feels like to stand at a crossroads, questioning identity, purpose, and whether the version of yourself the world sees is the one you actually are. When Taehyung interacts with Min-jae, there's no sense of hierarchy, no competition, just two people who survived the same kind of uncertainty and came out stronger, though not unscarred. Their conversations reportedly revolve less around fame and more around growth. How to stay grounded, how to protect your mental space, how not to lose yourself in expectations that keep getting louder every year. Min-jae's calm, thoughtful demeanor balances Taehyung's emotional depth perfectly, creating a dynamic where neither needs to perform. This is the kind of friendship where silence isn't awkward, where support doesn't require dramatic gestures, and where understanding comes from lived experience rather than constant reassurance. But despite that emotional compatibility, this bond doesn't dominate Taehyung's world. It exists as a safe corner, not a central axis. Taehyung values it deeply, but he doesn't revolve around it. And that's why Kim Min-jae sits at number 6, not because the connection lacks meaning, but because it functions more like a quiet refuge than an all-consuming bond, offering stability without pulling Taehyung's emotional gravity too far in one direction. What makes this friendship even more interesting is how rarely it's framed for public consumption. There are no exaggerated inside jokes pushed to the front, no forced bestie labels thrown around in interviews, and no moments that feel staged just to feed curiosity. And that restraint is exactly why it works. Taehyung has always been someone who protects his emotional space fiercely. He opens doors selectively, and Kim Min-jae feels like someone allowed in not because of status, but because of sincerity. When Taehyung talks about exhaustion, about feeling misunderstood, about carrying multiple versions of himself at once, Min-jae doesn't need it translated. He's lived a version of that life, being trained, molded, redirected, and expected to succeed without complaint. Their bond reflects a shared maturity that comes from having dreams tested and reshaped rather than handed over easily. But at the same time, this friendship doesn't consume Taehyung's emotional bandwidth. It doesn't define his daily rhythm, nor does it appear to be the first place he runs when emotions overflow. Instead, it feels like a grounding connection, someone he checks in with, someone who reminds him who he was before the spotlight got blinding. That's why, emotionally, Kim Min-jae remains just outside Taehyung's core circle. The trust is there, the respect is deep, but the intensity isn't overwhelming. And in Taehyung's world, intensity is the key factor. Number 6 belongs to Kim Min-jae because he represents balance rather than fire, a steady presence that supports Taehyung's journey without redefining it. Number 5, Jungkook. Close, but not what you think. This is where the list starts to feel uncomfortable for a lot of fans, because putting Jungkook at number 5 immediately challenges the most popular narrative out there. Yes, Taehyung and Jungkook are close. Yes, they've shared dorms, stages, chaos, laughter, tears, and years of growing up under the same brutal spotlight. But here's the truth that often gets buried under shipping edits and viral moments. Closeness does not automatically equal best friend intimacy. Taehyung and Jungkook's relationship is intense, emotional, and deeply bonded through shared history, but it's also complicated, layered, and sometimes heavy. They didn't just grow together. They grew while being watched, analyzed, and projected onto by millions of people who wanted their bond to mean something specific. That pressure alone changes how a friendship breathes. Taehyung often plays the role of the emotional mirror, someone who feels deeply and expresses abstractly, while Jungkook is more instinctive, action-driven, and internally processing. When they align, it's explosive and beautiful. When they don't, the distance is just as real, even if it's temporary. What many fans mistake for constant intimacy is actually shared survival. They understand each other without words because they went through the same storms, but understanding doesn't always translate into emotional refuge. Taehyung tends to seek friends who allow him to unravel, to be odd, poetic, slow, and unpredictable without expectation. With Jungkook, there's love, loyalty, and brotherhood, but there's also responsibility, history, and the weight of being BTS together. Sometimes that makes it harder to just exist freely. Their bond is less about choosing each other and more about being bound together by fate, timing, and shared identity. That's powerful, but it's different from the kind of friendship Taehyung gravitates toward when he wants emotional rest. Jungkook knows Taehyung deeply, and Taehyung would protect Jungkook without hesitation. But best friendship, in Taehyung's world, is about emotional alignment more than shared past. That's why Jungkook lands at number 5. Not because the bond is weak, but because it's complex, intense, and sometimes too heavy to be the safest place for Taehyung's heart to land. And the more you look at Taehyung and Jungkook without the fan-made narratives layered on top, the clearer this dynamic becomes. Taehyung doesn't approach Jungkook as someone he needs to explain himself to emotionally, nor as someone he leans on for introspective conversations that spiral late into the night. Instead, their connection thrives in moments of action. Music, performance, shared adrenaline, shared responsibility. Jungkook grounds Taehyung through presence, not through emotional unpacking. When Taehyung feels overwhelmed by his own thoughts, Jungkook's response is often practical rather than poetic, instinctive rather than reflective. That contrast can be comforting, but it can also feel limiting for someone as emotionally expansive as Taehyung. There have been moments across the years where you can sense Taehyung pulling inward, choosing silence rather than vulnerability around Jungkook, not out of distance or conflict, but because their emotional languages don't always overlap perfectly. They love each other deeply, but they don't always process the world the same way. And that matters. Taehyung is someone who bonds through shared emotional atmosphere, through art, mood, and meaning, while Jungkook bonds through loyalty, effort, and consistency. Those are different love languages, and while they intersect beautifully at times, they don't always create the safest emotional landing space. This is why Taehyung often seems freer, lighter, and more verbally expressive around friends outside BTS, because there's no unspoken history to manage, no expectations tied to an image bigger than themselves. With Jungkook, every interaction carries years of memories, public scrutiny, and the invisible weight of being symbols together. That doesn't diminish their bond. It defines it. Number 5 is not a downgrade. It's an acknowledgement that sometimes the people who know us the longest aren't the ones who understand us the deepest in the present moment. Jungkook remains family, remains irreplaceable, but in Taehyung's emotional hierarchy, he exists as a powerful constant rather than the closest emotional mirror. Number 4, Sungjae, chaotic comfort and emotional freedom. This is where the energy shifts completely, because when Sungjae enters Taehyung's orbit, the atmosphere changes from heavy reflection to pure emotional release. Sungjae isn't just a friend, he's a pressure valve. Their connection feels natural in a way that doesn't need explaining, like two people who immediately recognize the same wavelength and decide to stay there. Both debuted young, both balance idol life with acting, and both learned early how suffocating expectations can become when your personality doesn't fit neatly into the industry's mold. Sungjae's humor is loud, self-aware, and intentionally unserious, and Taehyung responds to that with visible relief. Around Sungjae, Taehyung laughs differently, not the polite variety, but the kind that feels unfiltered, almost reckless. This friendship thrives on spontaneity. They tease, they joke, they let conversations drift without direction, and that lack of structure is exactly what makes Sungjae so important in Taehyung's emotional landscape. Where some friends require emotional translation, Sungjae simply accepts Taehyung as he is in the moment, moody, playful, strange, or quiet. There's no pressure to be profound, no obligation to represent anything bigger than themselves. Their shared experiences in acting further deepen this bond, giving them a common language about scripts, characters, and the strange feeling of living multiple lives at once. Sungjae understands the exhaustion of switching identities constantly, and Taehyung doesn't have to over-explain that fatigue. But despite all this warmth, this friendship doesn't quite cross into the deepest emotional core. Sungjae is the friend Taehyung escapes with, not necessarily the one he dissects his inner storms with. The connection is vibrant, healing, and energizing, but it leans more toward shared joy than shared vulnerability. That's why Sungjae lands at number 4, essential for Taehyung's emotional balance, a source of freedom and laughter, but not the place where his quietest thoughts fully rest. Number 3, Park Bo-gum, soul-level understanding beyond words. This is where the list stops being about fun, chaos, or shared history and starts feeling deeply emotional in a way that's almost uncomfortable to watch, because Park Bo-gum isn't just a friend to Taehyung. He's someone who seems to understand him without needing constant presence. Their bond feels less like something built and more like something recognized. From the very beginning, fans noticed it wasn't loud, wasn't performative, and wasn't trying to prove anything. It was calm, almost sacred. Park Bo-gum carries a quiet kindness, an introspective warmth, and a spiritual calm that mirrors Taehyung's inner world in a way very few people ever have. When they interact, there's no rush, no chaos, no need to fill silence. And that's rare in Taehyung's life, where silence is often misunderstood. Both are known for their gentle manners, their emotional intelligence, and their tendency to think deeply before speaking, but what really binds them is how they navigate fame with humility rather than hunger. Bo-gum doesn't compete with Taehyung's energy, doesn't try to match it or overpower it. He complements it by grounding it. Their conversations, by all indications, are reflective rather than reactive, touching on life, purpose, faith, exhaustion, and identity rather than surface-level entertainment. This is the kind of friendship where eye contact says more than words, where understanding happens in pauses rather than sentences. Taehyung appears softer around Bo-gum, more centered, less guarded, as if he doesn't need to perform even subconsciously. But here's why Park Bo-gum stays at number 3 and not higher. Their bond is emotionally deep, but not constantly lived. It's not woven into daily routines or spontaneous moments. It's the kind of connection that feels eternal even if months pass, without seeing each other. Powerful, yes, but distant in proximity. Park Bo-gum is someone Taehyung aligns with on a soul level, someone who reminds him of who he is at his core, but not necessarily someone who occupies the closest emotional space in his everyday life. And sometimes, the most meaningful connections aren't the loudest. They're the ones that quietly shape who we become. Number 2, Jennie. Rare chemistry that transcends labels. This is where the list becomes genuinely provocative, because Jennie's position at number 2 isn't about rumors, headlines, or the internet's obsession with defining everything. It's about energy, timing, and an emotional compatibility that feels natural rather than constructed. Taehyung and Jennie exist in different groups, different narratives, different public expectations, but when their names cross paths, there's a reason it always feels electric. Not dramatic, not chaotic, electric. Both carry a duality that few idols manage to balance: intense charisma on stage and a guarded, introspective self off it. Jennie understands what it means to be perceived as powerful while constantly battling exhaustion, misinterpretation, and the pressure to always look unbreakable. Taehyung understands that too, deeply. Their similarity lies not in personality, but in emotional rhythm. They both retreat when overwhelmed, both value privacy fiercely, and both choose their connections carefully rather than widely. When Taehyung is around Jennie, there's a noticeable shift: less performance, more awareness, more intentional presence. Conversations between them, by all accounts, are grounded and thoughtful, not loud or attention-seeking. This is a connection built on mutual recognition rather than history. They don't need years of shared struggle to understand each other. They meet at the same emotional altitude naturally. Jennie challenges Taehyung intellectually and emotionally, not by pushing him, but by matching his depth. She doesn't ask him to explain his silences, and he doesn't demand her vulnerability. That balance creates trust. However, what keeps Jennie at number 2 instead of the top spot is proximity and continuity. Their bond, while intense and meaningful, exists in moments rather than constant presence. It's powerful, but intermittent. It influences Taehyung, sparks reflection, and offers emotional alignment, yet it doesn't fully anchor his everyday emotional life. Jennie represents a mirror, clear, honest, and sometimes startling, but not the place Taehyung consistently rests. And that's what makes this ranking so compelling. Number 2 isn't about almost being the best, it's about being deeply understood without needing to stay. Number 1, Baekhyun, the unexpected emotional home. This is the name that quietly makes everything click once you sit with it long enough. Baekhyun at number 1 isn't about shocking rankings or forcing a narrative. It's about emotional reality that reveals itself when you stop looking at friendship through group lines and start looking at it through human behavior. Taehyung and Baekhyun share something incredibly rare in the idol world: emotional ease without hierarchy. Despite Baekhyun being a senior, their dynamic never feels like Sunbae and Hubby. It feels equal, natural, and instinctive, like two people who instantly recognize a similar emotional language and decide not to question it. Both are artists driven by feeling rather than formula, both are expressive yet emotionally guarded, and both use humor, creativity, and intensity as shields when things get too heavy. Around Baekhyun, Taehyung doesn't seem to edit himself. He doesn't soften his oddness, doesn't restrain his moods, doesn't overthink how he's perceived. Baekhyun meets him exactly where he is, sometimes playful, sometimes chaotic, sometimes unexpectedly serious, and never asks him to be anything else. What truly elevates this friendship is emotional availability. Baekhyun is known among peers as someone who listens deeply, responds honestly, and isn't afraid of emotional depth even when it's uncomfortable. Taehyung, who often feels misunderstood because of his abstract way of expressing emotions, finds clarity here. Their conversations reportedly flow between laughter and vulnerability effortlessly, without pressure or performance. This is not a friendship built on shared schedules or forced proximity. It's built on choice. They don't need constant public proof, because the bond doesn't rely on validation. Baekhyun provides something Taehyung rarely gets: a space where fame, expectations, and identity don't dominate the room. Just two people existing honestly. That's why Jungkook doesn't sit at the top, and why this list matters. Taehyung's best friend isn't defined by how long they've known each other or how often they're seen together. It's defined by who feels like home when everything else feels loud. Baekhyun isn't just someone Taehyung trusts. He's someone Taehyung relaxes into. And in Taehyung's emotionally complex world, that kind of safety isn't just rare, it's everything.